Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classic Car Podcast here on Rana's Radar. Today we're going to be looking at a rat rod, not just any rat rod, but a truck rat rod. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've invited Drew to join me to talk about his 42 GMC. I met him at the Good Guys in Des Moines, Iowa in earlier this year, and loved it. Rat rods always catch your attention, but then when you've got a truck that's been turned into a rat rod, that's just catchy enough. And the funny thing is that his was the first rat rod that I saw up close. Steve, Drew's dad, actually told me that that's not a hot rod, that's a rat rod. And I had to ask him and tell me what the difference was. So that's why this one always stuck with me. And I had to get Drew to come here and tell me a little bit more because I know there's a lot of family history to this truck. And I just want to see the build of it, see more in detail. What this rat rod has inside and what's been involved. So we'll get Drew to come in. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying their podcast episodes. It gives me a chance to get up close and not just up close, but get more in detail about the builds, which I may not always have time for at the shows. So that's what this is about. And if you're liking it, be sure to subscribe, like, and turn on your notifications so you get notified every time a video comes up on Rana's radar. Okay, everybody. So as I mentioned, I've got Drew joining me today on tonight's podcast episode on rat rod, a truck rat rod. Drew, welcome to Rana's radar. Thanks, man. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really nice to meet you in Des Moines.
Yeah.
And once you called me to do the podcast, I was like, hey, let's do it. I mean, let's spread the word on rat rods and see where it takes us.
Well, I had to, as I mentioned just then to my viewers, I had to call you and let you know because yours was the first rat rod I got real close with, honestly. And that's why with your dad, Steve, as I'm walking in it and in my vlog as well, I'm going to show everybody is a little clip of me in the Good Guys Show at Des Moines.
Yep.
I'm referring to it as a hot rod, like, hey, check what's behind me. Look at this hot rod. I'm walking up to Steve and he's like, this is a rat rod. And I'm like, okay, please explain. And he explained to me the difference between a rat rod and a hot rod. So I had to get you here.
Yeah, rat rods are something different. I think they've always been around, but they're not very popular. Um, it's just basically taking something that's, I call it rusty, and making an artwork out of it. Creating something that's totally different, totally off the wall. And there's some that are just way out there, and there's some that are just okay and nice to look at, and everything in between. But um, you know, we started with rat rods at Back to the 50s in Minneapolis, and I think you went there
I did.
this year.
Yes. Yep. This
So
year. Yep.
probably about, I would guess, 8 to 10 years ago, me and Dad would go up there just to walk around, and we started seeing these cars that were rusted out, but they had the frames redone. Everything was drivable and safe, but they kind of had that just a cool look because I mean I love paint jobs, but I'm really falling in love with rust
Oh,
because
yeah.
number
I know
one,
the feeling.
you don't have to be a body guy to work on them. You don't have to worry about scratching them when you're working on them. You really can't do anything wrong. So anyway, we were up there, and I know Dad went the one year and he came back and he's like, "Hey, we got to start building these cars with rust." I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. So we went up another couple years, and then we started talking to these guys that were building these cars, and at Back to the 50s, there's 12,000 cars there, but there was probably 50 to 100 rat rods, and that's really the ones that people were paying attention to because they were so different. you know I mean, it's beautiful to see cars that are painted, but then when you see that one sitting there that's just crazy, you
It's
stop and look at it.
crazy. It
You
catches your eye,
Yes, you
100%.
study it, and
Yep.
not everybody loves them, but anyway, the guys that got me onto it, they're great builders up there, was Roger and Jake Quast. They live right up by the cities, and just incredible rat rod builders. So I got talking to these guys, and kind of struck up a friendship. And most car guys, they want to tell you about their build. They're open, like, hey, here's my number, call me, text me, I'll help you out, because we were just trying to figure out, where do you start with some of this stuff. And
Exactly.
So
Well, that's
those
what I
two,
want to know as well. That's why you're here. So we're going to go look at the build of the truck in detail. And I'm so glad you sent me all those pictures because I want
yeah,
to know, where do you start from?
well, yeah, and we got an inspiration. So on that picture I sent you with 4 trucks on it in the same picture, Roger Quast built a tanker truck on an S10 frame.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's the one we originally saw up at the Fifties. And that truck on the tank had B&B Oil Company on the side. Well, my dad worked for B&B Oil Company in Waverly when he was younger, and so that obviously caught our eye. Yeah, it's the one in the top right picture. That's Roger in there. And that was just for us, we fell in love with that truck. And the bottom left is also Rogers. You can see the B&B oil on the side. And really, those guys are kind of our inspiration, and also I can blame them for all the money we've spent on these dumb rat rods because they kind of got us hooked. Um, but anyway, so that's kind of how we started, is just going up there, seeing crazy builds. And this, I wouldn't call this a crazy build, but this is a well done. This is a well done build, and it's all it's very well done. Them two do a great job of building. So my grandpa's truck is the top left. Now he drove a B&B oil truck. My grandpa also worked at B&B Oil, and we also farmed. But in our younger days, grandpa worked at B&B. He hauled fuel oil around, and he
Okay.
would have probably been in his 20s and 30s when he had that job. So, with the family history like that, we were like, okay, we want to recreate this. So then I found the truck in the bottom right, which is not the same as grandpa's, but we found the bottom right truck on an auction. We were in the field combining, and I brought up auction time. This thing was on there, and we bought it. And at first, it was just going to be yard art because we were busy in the field. I wasn't sure what we were going to do with it. And so we ended up getting this thing bought really, really cheap. And Dad's like,
What
well,
is cheap? Tell us, what is cheap?
so I bought the bottom right truck for $1,000.
Wow. And that was the whole thing with the wheels,
Everything
with the
right there.
barrel in the back.
It was pretty straight sheet metal, sight unseen. It's in pretty good shape. Now, Dad's like, okay, well, I think we should put a 350 gas engine in there and just get it running and make it look, nostalgic. And I'm after seeing these rat rods up at the back to the 50s, I'm like, Dad, we're going crazy with this. We've done all the stock builds, you know what I mean? We're going big. We're going to do something when people see it, they're going to bring out their cell phones, take pictures, and it's going to be different. So that's originally how the truck started. That's its original form on the bottom right, and then
Now
we got
you did a drawing of what you were thinking.
yeah.
Was
So
this was
I
this
want
before you got in there and started touching it, or was it during it?
this build my drawing just like Kindig. Dave, he draws a sketch, and mine is very similar to Kindig's art ability. You can see this is my rendering of what I wanted the truck to look like. And
Can
again,
I
Jake,
just say you did such a good job with that
well,
engine? I mean, look at it. Look.
that's to scale. I mean, I was drawing this the one night, and my wife come up to me and she's like, "You're what's wrong with you?" Like. So I showed this to Dad, and I'm like, "We're going to lower this to the ground. We're putting semi tires on it, a Cummins diesel in the front, and again, this is all Jake Quast has a sweet truck that he built on the ground. So I took a lot of ideas from him, and this was my rendering of what I wanted it to kind of look like, and it actually turned out pretty close. So I mean,
It
um,
did.
I was happy with my
Minus
build.
a few props, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, drawing it is one thing, and then putting it, getting it done, it was a whole different level. Never really tackled anything like that before.
Well,
We had
before
just
we get into the build, Drew, let's have a look at your involvement with cars. Like, how are
sure,
you able to get in there? And you had this idea, which was just, I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. And we're going to look at the restoration process. I'm not even going to call it restoration because it's not. It's customization,
yep,
modification, because that's what these rat rods are. They all look great. They
absolutely.
all look different. And each one is custom to the owner and the person who built it, right? You put
Yep.
your own touches. What's your background, Drew? How do you know how to work on these trucks?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm mechanically gifted. God blessed me with the ability to figure things out. Um, we we farm corn, soybeans, pigs. I fix all our equipment. So I mean, we have a farm shop available. We have tools available, and in the wintertime, yes, we do work in the winter as farmers, but we have more time to be like, you know what, let's tackle a project. Let's get something done. So all that kind of stacks up to being able to get some stuff done. My dad is really smart, just with building, and he did a lot of cars when he was younger, and he's 71. So I mean, he's in his all those guys in the 60s to 70s. I mean, that's just what they did. You know, they just built cars and raced cars and had fun. So me and him have done well. We started with the 55 Wagon. That was our first rat rod. And this car build was, and I don't want to go too long into it because I know this is about the
No,
tank.
no, that I still want to know about the 55 Bel Air
So
wagon.
the
So let's.
55 Wagon, that was sitting. That's Dad's Nomad. So we'll
Oh,
just go with this since it's up. So Dad had a 56 Nomad, and it was in pretty good shape. I remember the inside had a few vice grips holding the door opener, and it wasn't perfect on the inside, but that car today, and he's tried to look for it and find it. I mean, 56 Nomads are $100,000 cars all day,
yes.
if not more. So, okay, there's the wagon that we I wouldn't say restored, but that's the wagon that was bought in Waverly. Dad used to fill that car up at B&B when he worked there, and then it got parked in a cow pasture for about 50 to 60 years.
I
And of
think I have
course,
a
there's a
picture of
picture
that.
of us picking it up with the skid loader.
Oh, yes.
So, of course, like any old car, nobody put them in a shed. So it sat out in the pasture. There's some bullet holes in the windows. Um, we found it and gave next to nothing for it because I mean it was pretty much the floor was gone, full of
Yeah.
holes. Um, we picked it up on both sides with a skid loader, one on each end, and figured if it holds together, we're going to load it on the trailer, and if it buckles, we're going to just set it back down. Well, we got it loaded, and we brought that home, and like my mom and everybody was like, "You guys are nuts." I mean, this is just there was nothing. I mean, so I welded. We basically did a frame off. That might sound funny looking at it, but the frame had holes in it. The floor had a lot of holes in it. We just started welding, and we welded, and I did most of that. I would say honestly, I have probably 300 hours or 400 hours of just fabricating and welding in that car. And but the nice thing about that is when you're doing a 55 Chevy, once we got the body off, you just order parts and everything fits for the most
Mhm.
part. So you open up your 55 catalog, you order brakes, you order shocks, you order everything you need, and it's simple. And I mean simple as a loose term, but um, so the frame underneath that is pretty much it's all stock, but it's ready to go down the road. And that thing drives 60 miles an hour down the road, just beautiful. So
So let me just show something here. This is still the wagon, right?
yeah, that's the inside. So that's we did all old work jeans for the seats, and then we took old license plates and made the roof just something different. I mean, um, in the first year we took that to back to the 50s. Bitchin Rides was up there. This has probably been 5 years ago. We parked up there kind of where they were hanging out in their semi, and we're on the show. If you go to I don't know what episode it is. Well, it's Land of 10,000 Cars. I don't know what season it is, but if you go to Bitchin Rides Land of 10,000 Cars, they interview us on the show for about 2 minutes, and then Dave and Kev Dog signed the dash. So I mean that was just a great highlight of the 50s that year, and we have so many people stop and look at this car.
Look at the jeans.
Yeah, I mean, we I'm not lying to you. I can be parked next to a $100,000 Nomad or a whatever, you name it, at the back to the 50s, and there will be 20 people looking at this car, and that's just the way it is. I mean, people flock to it. They want to touch it. They
Yeah.
want to look at it. We've had so much fun with it, and we put a little 350 engine in this thing, a little 350 turbo. I mean, yeah, the Foose wheels are probably worth more than the whole car.
Usually is the case with the rat rods. Honestly, the thing that I love about it is the I guess the stuff that gets used. I mean, it's
Yeah,
recycling at its best.
yeah,
Recently, when I was at the Turkey Run, I interviewed a lady with her rat rod, and she had a baking pot on top of the engine. She had a
yeah,
saucepan because her feet were too short to reach it. And I love the fact, she had her, I think it was her dad's or grandfather's suitcase, which they went to college with, sitting in the
sure.
back. It's
Vintage.
history,
Yeah,
small pieces that would otherwise be junk and in the bin, in the trash, but it's there
correct.
sitting. I mean, you guys use the speed limit sign.
Yeah, and you can see there's a vice grip down there to adjust the seat. There's a lot of details in that car that, and you notice the floor is there's nothing. I didn't buy a floor for that. I literally cut pieces on my plasma cutter to fit and just welded. I mean, most guys would look at that and be like, "Well, why didn't you do it right?" Well, I did it
There's
the
no
way I
right.
wanted it. No, exactly. So, Dad loves this car because he can get in it. We live on gravel road. We can get in it. He can drive to town. He can take the grandkids to ice cream. He can do whatever he wants. There's no worry with this car. If you're stuck in the rain, if you're stuck in a hailstorm, you're good.
It's just
Um,
going to add to it, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, he drives this car a lot in the summertime, and he's got a really nice '55 Chevy truck, like really nice, well done. That probably gets drove 5 miles a year. So
Is
it's
it this
just
white one?
it's the silver one. Yeah. So that
That's
truck,
nice.
he started that. Well, I drove that to high school. My older brother drove that to high school. It did not look like this. It obviously it's restored now, but when we drove that, it was called the Stomper. Everybody knew the Stomper in Waverly. It had the big tires. It looked kind of like this, but now we took it up to Ken's Classics. Um, Dad did most of the frame himself. The undercarriage is all new, but we did it ourselves. Dad probably did the majority of that build. And then Ken's Classics in Wisconsin is just a fabulous bodywork guy. And we wanted it to, I mean, he wanted it to be nice. Dad wanted it to be real nice. And he originally built this truck in '75. Dad did. It's got 75, it's got a 75 frame under it with a 55 Chevy on top. It was his
Wow.
farm truck. That's what he
Wow.
drove every day. So now I mean, that's a really nice, that every seam is perfect. The paint is perfect. There's probably zero Bondo in it. That's a really nice truck, but it doesn't get drove. So,
Well, I
you know,
love the fact that it was restored. It's a truck that you drove to high school. Your brother
yeah,
drove it to high school. It's still there. It's there in the family, and now it's just been given a big breath of fresh
yeah,
air. And
it probably always will be. I mean, I don't ever see a reason to get rid of it. I mean,
no,
someday, Dad's going to be gone someday, and it's probably going to be a keepsake where it's just hard to get rid of that stuff. That's what car guys deal with is just the nostalgia and the family heirlooms.
Drew, you've got a family yourself, right? And I think your son helped you a little bit in the truck too. We're going to share that soon.
Yeah, so here's my wife, Joy, very supportive, just a wonderful woman, good Christian lady. Um, that's my son, Andy's 14, Ava's 12, Allie is 6, and Acre is almost 3. And just a
That's
wonderful family, great kids. Yeah, I've been blessed. And like I said, my
100%.
wife is okay with well, I call it's my disease. This card is a disease thing, but she doesn't always think it's great, but she's fairly supportive. So
That's
that
good. It's always good to
yeah,
have a supportive spouse, honestly.
correct,
It's good.
correct.
I can't
And the
complain
kids,
either.
the kids that's at a car show in Clear Lake. We went up there and camped. Went Clear Lake, Iowa does a cruise around the lake um,
Okay.
on Friday night, and then the show is on Saturday night. First year I've gone up there, and we just had a blast. I mean, it's a great event. Probably 500 to 600 cars are there, and that'd be a good place for you to come up to Clear Lake, Iowa. That's just a great show.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
yeah,
And
that's that weekend there, and yeah. So you try to
um,
make family events out of it too. On
it's
your own.
big. The family events, a family friendly atmosphere in the car culture here in America is massive.
Yeah. And we do that at the 50s too. We pull a camper up there and stay on the grounds, and that way the kids have a place to go when it's too hot. There's a refuge there. There's something for them to do because it can get hot up there.
Oh
And
yeah, I know.
yeah,
It was hot. It was very hot back to the 50s.
it's hot and it's a lot to see.
There was a lot to see. I had a great time at Back to the 50s, honestly. Did you go this year?
No, we were spray. It's hard. We spray all our own crops. We have a lot of pigs. We have just a lot of things going on. And this week or that weekend just didn't work. I wanted it to, and that's the thing about farming. Sometimes you can't do things you want, but then there's times when you can take a week off and go somewhere. But yeah,
Oh, well,
so
it
hopefully
doesn't
next
matter
year.
because it was meant to be. I still saw you in Des Moines for the Good Guys Show.
Yeah, so we ended up going to Des Moines, and that was really the first big event we took the tanker to. I've had it done for a few years. I brought it to Waverly for cruise nights, and of course, all the Waverly guys give me a hard time, and but they all loved it. But
Hmm.
we loaded up. I didn't drive it to Des Moines. I mean, it drives like a tank. It'll go 60, 65, but it's kind of like a white knuckle ride.
A white
So we
knuckle ride? What's that?
Well, white knuckles where you're just holding on to the steering wheel, and you're at the end of the trip, you're tired.
White
it's
knuckle
anxiety.
ride. Okay, I've learned something new today.
We trailered it down there, and yeah, here we are down there. Obviously, this must be your footage.
Well, yeah, this is my footage, and I just wanted to show a little bit of it because I kept referring to it as a hot rod, and Steve's in this as well. So I just want to show everyone how we met at the Good Guys. Let's put a bit of sound on this. Now, this is the hot rod I saw when I first walked in. I started driving and yeah, it definitely catches your attention. So I'm going to see if the owner's here and they can tell me a little bit more about what they've actually done to this absolute beast.
If they were real metal and actually hurt.
Don't worry about that. I was just. This was one of my first shows, so there's a clip of everybody walking, and then we get back to Steve. I doubt the 42 GMC would have looked like that when it came out.
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
Cab is the same. That's it.
The what?
Just the cab is the same.
Just the cab is the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So please, if you don't mind, tell us what's inspired you and what is it? It's a gas tank? It's a rat rod.
My dad, when
That was brilliant because I'm not sure if I actually turned the camera off and I was like, okay, a rat rod. And in my head, I'm thinking, rat rod, what's a rat rod? This looks so cool,
Every day in life, you learn something new.
100%. And that was the day that Rana learned what a rat rod was. And you
You
know
know,
what? Ever since then, I've fallen in love.
well, yeah. Now, just don't get the sickness and start building one. You and your husband might have one here in a couple years, but
Yeah, well, he knows that. Well, I guess I should say this that in this year, in 2023, I'm very keen on doing something myself. And
okay.
it's going to be a truck.
Oh, cool.
And it'll probably be, I'm going to be getting more information on it anyways. I don't want to go off topic, but I'm looking at it as a winter project, as you car people would call it. So winter project for 2023. But I'm really leaning forward to getting the patina look.
Yeah. Well, it's popular right now. I mean, it
It's very
really is. And I like that you're giving us just a little bit of a plug of what's to come. You're doing a little advertising. It's your channel. You can do whatever you want.
It's I don't know if it's advertising or what because you know what it'll definitely be funny for you lot watching it and I won't be doing all of it myself. I'll have to have someone who's going to agree to film and let me say okay, let me do this, you just talk me through it and I'll do this bit, just tell me where to screw or which wrench to use. So it'll be fun, but we'll see what happens. But that's definitely in the works. Hey Drew, let's get into the build.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's do it.
where did you start? Okay, so before we get to the build, as Steve just said, you started off with the cab of a 1942 GMC.
Yep. So yes, I stripped everything down. I kept the cab on there. there's guys that'll take everything apart and do a completely custom frame. This is kind of like my first major overhaul build, like where it was like everything was going to be custom. So that was a 1.5-ton frame, and I'm like, you know what, this thing is probably
Wow.
stronger than what they make now. So I stripped everything down, left the cab, and then those front of those trucks curved down a little bit in the frame. So I welded some C-channel on the front to straighten it,
Let's
and
have a
then
look at that because I do
yeah, there
know.
should be some pictures. Just a ton of welding and a ton of measuring. But again, you had to start with the thought of, okay, I'm going to lower this thing to the ground like probably a foot or more lower than what it normally is. So you're going to change a lot of things there. Um, but see, you can see the C channel all along the frame. You can see the old frame tucked in there on the inside. I just welded over top of it. That's a steering box out of a 1992 Chevy I put on there. That front axle I found in a junkyard. That's on an F650 Ford because I wanted the 10 bolt for the semi tires. Custom motor mounts, you know, and then I had a couple buddies help me, which we'll hit on them later. The pictures of those guys, but
Yeah.
this is the rear end. So you can see I cut the rear end, or I cut the frame off, and then I channeled up and around so my airbags would sit underneath that frame so it would raise and lower. So all that stuff is just a lot of making sure you're square, making sure you're true, and then measuring, cutting, playing around, mocking stuff up with 2x4s. This is the most time consuming because if you don't get this right, the whole build is, in trouble.
There's a chassis already here before you start this step.
What's that?
There's a chassis already here.
Yeah, yes, this was already stripped down. I got all this stuff from my local welding shop that's like 5 miles away.
Okay.
Everything I need is right there. But
So
then
you built the chassis yourself?
yes, every modification was done in my shop, and some buddies helped me in a welding shop for about a week. But you can see the 4-link suspension, those 2 bars, that's getting the 4-link set up because you got to get your geometry right. So I want the truck to sit on the ground when it stops. I have airbags to lower it to the ground, and I want it at ride height at 4 inches. So you got to get everything figured out, because it all has to line up. The drive shaft has to line up. Your angles have to be right. Your axle has to be straight. So there's just a lot of tacking, measuring. Like I said, this is the main thing that takes a ton of time, and but you gotta do it right. Otherwise, I mean, this is the base of the machine. So
True.
we can keep flipping through. That's just me welding. And again, you're lowering the truck. Let's just say a foot. You're lowering the truck a foot, but the engine and the tranny and the drive shaft still have to go to the back. So
Right.
most vehicles, you can see the transmission, and I'm building a shell around that out of. I had some 1/2-inch rebar laying around because I was doing a concrete project, and so I just kind of used whatever I had laying around, and basically, for the most part, your transmission and drive shaft almost act as your armrest. I've got a shield over them, but that's kind of where they're at. So, I mean, you want to build it safe to where if something happens, it's not going to come up and hit you in the face.
Yes.
But the reality is, if you're going to make a vehicle that's on the ground, everything else has to stay where it needs to be. So you're going to have a whole different ball game. I mean, every vehicle that's stock in America, all this is below the cab. Well, this is coming through the cab. And you can see I couldn't put a bench seat in there. So I went and found these green seats out of an
Boat
old fishing
seats.
boat, and I welded them in there, and they work great. They're not very comfortable. I need to change, but I was just looking for something that fit and kind of matched the patina and I want it to kind of look right. So again, you're fabricating everything. You're talking to people that have done it before. You're asking questions, and you just kind of go and hope at the end it drives down the road.
I
So
never thought about that, honestly. What you just mentioned with the having the air rides in there as well when it gets lowered. You never think about that when you see it, about what's exactly happening with the mechanisms underneath, with the
yeah,
drivetrain and the frame. I
yeah,
mean, we
because
just see it
obviously
look really cool and go up and down.
when you lower it, your drive shaft is moving when you raise it. So when you're at ride height, your drive shaft needs to be where it needs to be. When I
Hmm.
lower the truck to the ground, the front wheels actually turn, because as they turn, as it's lowering, it's changing. Your steering is moving because it's pushing your tie rod a little bit. So everything kind of moves as it functions. But like I said, I didn't do this first. I'm not copying people, but yet I'm copying people. I'm doing my own build, but yet people way smarter than me have done this before. And but here you see I got the frame chopped off, and I'm just trying to get everything leveled and square. You can see an airbag tucked in there. That's an 87 Chevy 1-ton dually rear end. And then I put adapters on to get from 8-bolt to 10-bolt semi tires.
And you needed to be that 1-ton dually because of the tank that you were going to be putting on it.
Well, yeah, just the torque, from the Cummins. And you're turning a pretty big tire. You're turning 4 of them. The tank itself that I put on is actually empty. It's not probably that heavy. I mean, I can kind of slide it around the floor on my own.
Oh, okay.
So there's really not a ton of weight here. More of it's in the front end with the engine and the tranny. But, you're just turning a lot. And the transmission that I put in here had a local builder here in Waverly, really sharp guy, Chris Schmidt. He rebuilt the transmission up to like 800 horsepower. So I've got the option to really do some crazy things if I want. Here I'm just mocking it up, just kind of, trying to figure stuff out. I ordered those airbags online because I needed a certain, fitment to get in there. They've held up really well. I don't remember what company they are, but yeah. So
and what's this frame here? What's the wooden frame there?
That's just my 2x4 mock-up of what I wanted to build out of metal. So you always kind of make stuff first instead of building it out of metal. Just use cardboard in some instances, wood, anything that's easy to work with. And then I kind of got my height and I kind of figured that out. And then I was like, okay, that's what I wanted. And I actually made them square shape now. But then I went to the welding shop, cut what I needed, got it all welded together, and then it works. Then you're not wasting metal, you're not wasting time. So you definitely need to mock up things and take your time. Otherwise, it can get you in trouble. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now here it is in the welding shop, Plainfield Welding, just down the road from us. Those guys are incredible. They can build anything, and I mean anything. So I took it there. You run into times when you're like burned out and you're tired of it, and you need a spark. And the boys at Plainfield did a phenomenal job. I took it there for the main reason to get the front end done. And there's a bunch of pictures on the front end. It's just so much easier. A farm shop doesn't have what a welding shop has. So there you have everything you need to build, and it's right there. So we mock stuff up. That's back in my place now. But the front end is basically welded on. It returned from a welding shop. Or no, I'm sorry, it's not done. That's just mocked up. I'm sorry about that. So that's me mocking more stuff up, trying to figure out.
We'll forgive you, Drew. We'll forgive you.
Yeah. The airbags that are on that axle, I ended up not using. I went with a different route, but that's my F650 front axle. That's kind of the look. It gets you excited when you start mocking stuff up. It's like, okay, this is turning out good. I still don't know if it's going to work when I'm done, but at least it looks good. So then I took it back to the welding shop, and them guys are, like I said, so good. Okay, so that's Jake. Since we're at this picture, that's Jake Quast. Just want to give a shout out to Jake. The dude's a great rat rod builder. Gave me a lot of advice up in Minnesota. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, the guy. I mean, he's got some incredible builds. And we went up there to visit him when Back to the 50s was canceled in 2020. That's from then. I actually went up to Jake's house. And anyway, that's the Clear Lake Cruise, just a picture. That's the finished product. Well, I'm not really done yet, but that's as of now. Okay, there's Lyle from Plainfield Welding. He helped me with the air ride system. He helped me with the front end. Just gave me a major boost. I mean, they call him Lucky. The dude is sharp. Like I said, it's always good to have friends that are smarter than you and want to help you. But just a shout out to Lucky. And then that's at the local county fair after the Combine Demolition Derby. But and then the other guy, I don't know if you got the other picture up, but the other guy also helped on on the build.
It was another 100%. I'm just trying to find it.
We can get to him later too. But
Well, we did have one other person helping you, Drew. Who is this little guy? What's
there
he
you go.
doing?
There's Andy. So you try to teach your kids some skill, and I think he was tightening the fan blades or something there. You can see he's got his work boots on. And, he's just a great kid. He just does whatever we ask of him, and I threw that in there just because he's.
Oh, I love it. I'm so glad you did. And I said to you, I said, send family pictures. The fact that you've got your son helping you, I love it. I absolutely love it. So I'm glad you did do that.
Yeah, he likes.
There was another one, but what is the front? I think I'm going to show this picture because I love it, and we have to show everybody exactly the front of it. Look at that.
Okay. Yeah, so that picture was taken. Some professional photographer was sitting around the Clear Lake cruise that night when we were on the lake, and the way the sun's hitting that truck. I mean, that's a beautiful picture. Whoever took that.
Yeah.
But what I want to do in the future is I'm looking for a gas pump to mold around my front radiator and air to air. So if I could get a gas pump molded around the front end just for protection, that's kind of what I'm looking for to do in the future, because I want to leave it all fuel related.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, people don't give away gas pumps either, even if they're rusted out. So I've put that on the back burner, but I still want to do things to this truck. It's not 100% complete. It probably never will be, but it gets, honestly, when I drive around, it gets so many people that give me the peace sign, the thumbs up. They hang their camera out the window and they're taking pictures. And I didn't necessarily build it to be like, look at me, but I wanted to build something different that was like, when I pull up, people are going to be like, whoa, what the heck is that?
100%.
I wanted to be outside the box. Let's just put it that way. And
it's definitely outside the box. And I think the biggest effect here is the wheels, the massive 4 wheels in the back.
Yeah.
The front with that cab in there as well is just, like I said in the video, it's an absolute beast.
I'm not really sure how Dad took it when I told him I was going to put semi tires on it. I mean, he's old school, but he loves it. And then we put the chrome spikes on the front wheels and just little touches. Everything on there's took a lot of time customizing. I always tell people, I'm like, I'd never do it again. Like, I'd never want to do that again. Well, now I just bought a 1940 GMC Wrecker, and I'm starting another project. So,
wow. Okay, what are you gonna?
Nuts.
You're gonna hopefully the ball will still stay there.
Well, that one I'm hoping to be a little more stock, but it's not going to be totally stock. I'm going to probably drop a 90s Dodge frame under it, 90s Dodge dually. And so it can be a nice driver. But that radiator out of that truck is original out of this one. That's a 42 radiator running a 5.9 Cummins. And that thing stays at 180 degrees, whether it's 40 degrees or whether it's 100.
How does it work? How is that possible from 1942?
I took it down to the radiator guy in Waterloo, and I told him what I was doing with it, and he pressure checked it and everything. He says, I think it'll run just fine. Wow. So again, you're trying to build things and kind of do it on a budget for the most part. So if you can save a little money and run that for a while, that engine is stock. I took the fuel plate out, so it throws a little black smoke, but that's pretty much a stock engine. If I do something crazy with that engine, compound turbos or whatever, we'll have to get a different radiator, obviously. But for now, to drive it around and have fun, it really runs pretty darn good. And it's an automatic. I put an automatic in there just because I didn't want to mess with shifting. There's not a lot of room in the floor.
No.
I just wanted to get in and drive. So,
well, I want to show a little bit more of that truck because you've done so much to the build of it, the frame, the rear end, but there's also so much stuff you've done on the outside of it as well to finalize the look.
Yeah, and that's just the art form, keeping it in the category that you're wanting it. It's your masterpiece, so you're just trying to make it.
He was 25 years old.
Themed.
I want to get to this part, Drew, where you walk me around and we
Yep.
can actually see. And you explained to me the rust as well, which I always find fascinating. Look at
Yeah.
this,
So
everybody. Let's put this
that's a
on.
that's a fuel luber, a fuel pump, so yeah, that luber would have not been on a truck originally. That would have been in a station. But again, it was oil related, so I wanted to correlate it in the truck. I had room for it in between the wheels. A lot of that stuff on the truck really wasn't there, but you start adding stuff like cans and things and hoses and lines, and people start one like, what's that for? What's that do? It really don't do anything, but it's just the fact of like that was behind my hand right there, sitting on that floorboard. That little grease pump, I welded that on there. It does. They wouldn't have been on there in the original truck, but I had it laying around. We've been collecting junk for years with the thoughts of doing something. And
Well, there you go. It didn't go to waste.
correct, correct. Um, yeah, you just keep adding stuff. I mean,
And here I had to ask you about mum oil.
yeah. So our last name's Mummelthai. There was no Mum Oil. Midland Oil was that logo. Midland was a company, and I don't know when they dissolved, but Dad painted all that. He's really good. I mean, Dad's just creative. He did a lot of that paint job and made it look rustic, and he did a great job. I mean, a lot of people will just paint on a rusty thing and it looks brand new paint. Well, you kind of want to make it look vintage if you can, like it was there originally. And for not, like I said, we're just farmers, but I
Well,
think
I mean, that's what I asked you there as well. I said, okay, how did you get that vintage look? And you explained to me,
YouTube,
you said,
YouTube.
tell us again, what did you do?
Well, so Dad, you water down, like if we're gonna paint that rear, you spray water all over it. Then he took like confetti or different sizes of confetti, throw it on there, okay, and then paint your logo. And then obviously where you paint over the confetti, there's not going to be paint. So when it's all dry, wipe it off, and then kind of sand it a little bit, and then you knock all the confetti off, and then all those rust spots look like they chipped away over years. That's the intent. And then he did the same with Gasoline Alley. That was a Gasoline Alley. That tank was not on the truck when I bought it. We bought that tank at a farm sale. It was back in the trees. So we took the tank that came on the truck, took that off. It was a little bit longer. We
And
put
it
this
was
shorter.
newer. It was newer than what you guys have done to it.
Yeah, the
That
original
tank.
one had like a square back end on it, and we wanted this sloped, and this one's a little shorter, kind of matched the build better. So we put this tank on, and then this 55-gallon tank, that holder was on that truck. That would have been a delivery area for that tank. You would have chained that on there, and then when you got to the customer, which is what I'm telling you in the video, you would have
Yeah.
rolled it off and rolled it into a shed. So that was I don't know the vintage, I don't know Quaker State, I don't know what year that can is, but it's rusty and it matches my patina, so I threw it on there. And then I cut up all these old oil 5-gallon oil cans. I got tons of them, so I cut all them up. And again, I'm still not done with covering my tranny, but cut them all up to the size I needed, screwed them in there. Um, we've got thousands and thousands of old license plates. I haven't done anything to the ceiling yet. That's in the works too. I got some ideas. I bought a bunch of old gas station black and white photos when I was up at the 50s. They're like full size paper. I mean, they're good size. I'm thinking about putting them in the interior, all around the interior of that truck, so it's all vintage gas station when you look
Wow, that
inside.
would look cool. That would look
Yeah.
really cool.
I mean, again, I want to keep everything fuel and oil related in this build. So, that's my thought. Like that tank sitting there below my left hand with the hose
Yeah.
coming out, and that does nothing. It would have, I mean, I just added that stuff for people to
It
look
does.
at.
It completes the look.
Yeah. And that's really the rat rod look. Is the best rat rods I've seen really do a good job with things on there that make you question, like, wow, this is cool. What's this doing? I just want to look at this. I just want to walk around for 20 minutes and study this truck because it's got a story behind it.
100%. It's got a story, and there's a reason why you've chosen to have this look, and it goes back to the truck and where it came from for you. But
Yeah.
is that the exhaust? The tall
Yes,
cylinder I see there?
the chrome stack, that's only chrome on that truck other than the lug nut, the tips on the lug nuts. I wanted a chrome stack, I guess. I don't know why, but I threw a stack on there. And, all in all, I'm really happy with how it turned out. Um, like I said, it doesn't ride like a new car at all. But, um,
Well, this is where I get you to turn over as well. And then I definitely want to show some things that Steve's done and stuff
yep.
that you've grown up with. You've always grown up around classics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's definitely definitely want to touch on that. But we have to show how this runs and hear that, because I always like to hear the engine. So hopefully viewers will enjoy it as well. Here we go. And I will be able to turn the music on for it as well. You guys want to see it turned on? That's the awesome thing about these car shows, because you never know what you come across. I mean, this here is just a piece of work, absolutely custom. And what they've done to it, putting together different parts from other cars. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And we're going to see it lift stock 42.
Pause it a minute. Pause it. Okay, so I want to make a mention of a few things. So at the welding shop, we came up with the idea of, see the front airbag underneath there. That's an airbag out of like a semi trailer. Okay, so that bag, when that's deflated right now, and you can see the angle of the front end, that bar ties into the front axle. So when that bag is aired up, it'll obviously push that arm higher, and it rocks it forward to lift the truck up.
That's why the back always goes up first.
Well, I didn't, honestly. I'm having trouble with the air system on this video. It did a kind of a bad job of raising. I got it figured out later in the summer, but it generally it airs up in about probably 10 seconds. It'll all be lifted up. It doesn't work good on this video for some reason, and I was kind of embarrassed about that. But
oh my goodness!
but yeah, that'll air up and then just pivot the front end and lift everything up, and then the back just simply lifts up the rear end straight up. So there's a pivot here. That was kind of my dream, and the guys, like I said, Nick and Lucky at the welding shop helped me with all that to get it square and true and right. I mean, you want your front end done right. When you're going down the road, you kind of want it to hold together. So that was kind of the plan there. But
so usually with the air rides, the front goes up first.
It just depends. Really, the sophisticated builds, they can control each airbag alone. They can air one up, they can air the rear up. They can do. This is designed just to kind of go up together, but the rear does lift first because the rear bags are smaller, so they hold less air. They get full and then they go up. These in the front take a little bit longer, but generally it's, like I said, probably 10 seconds. The whole thing is up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you did mention at the end of our interview that you were going to be working more on the truck. So since the Good Guys until now, what have you done to it?
The intention's always there, but the big thing I want to do is find that fuel pump, an old 40s, 50s fuel pump, something square to fit around that front shroud. That's really one of my biggest goals. And we got busy, we started harvest and got that going. And it's just sometimes hard to find time, but there are a lot of little things that need to be done, things that you wouldn't notice. But mainly I want to get that fuel pump in the front. That's a goal.
You've got family, you've got your farming as well, which is, I respect that so much. And at the same time, you're building this. It's something's got to be put in the back burner, and this is a hobby for you. And usually that's the one that takes the toll when it comes to family life and making money, right?
Yep, absolutely. There'll be months where I don't work on a car, and then there'll be a week where I hit hard. But that's just the way it is. But yeah, so it's been fun. I mean, challenging and very rewarding.
I bet it has 100%. On a mention of rewarding, let's just put up this article here about your dad. Now,
Yeah.
what
So,
can you tell me about this?
yeah, this just goes through Waverly paper. There's a local writer, a fill-in guy that does articles on. This guy's in his 70s too, so basically does articles on the boys from back in the day and all the cars that they had. And once a week, he picks a different guy in town, and he just went over Dad's cars and what he's had in the past. Um, and a lot of those cars, we wish we still had. The '56 Nomad is one. Dad had a '56 or a '55 two-door Post. He had a '69 Z28 Camaro, which is that green one right there, and that is a well over $100,000 car. Now he had a '77 Blazer, the gray '55 Chevy truck, and now he's got the '42 GM tanker with him and me, and the '55 Rat Rod Wagon, which is there's the Camaro. If you go back one more,
Mm-hmm.
so that is that last picture we just had. Okay, that's the wagon in the bottom right that was sitting in the pasture for 50 years. That's how we found it.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's on the road today. And the people that we bought it from were like, "You're never going to get that going," and they thought we were, crazy too. But um,
Well, I'm
like,
happy to come across something like that.
well,
Maybe
the thing is, they don't
just
they don't make them anymore.
yeah.
So if you can find something, and this thing was 10 miles from home, so it was worth a try. And so yeah, Dad's always been a car guy, and then he started farming and started having kids, and times were, when you're young and times are tougher and you need some money. Well, he ended up selling the Nomad and buying 4 wagons to haul corn. And I think he sold the Nomad. I mean, this is long. We were kids, but he sold the Nomad for like 10 grand, which was a good price. And the '69 Camaro, I don't remember when he got rid of that, but that's one we wish we still had in the shed too. But again, you had kids, you had farm payments, you had things that you needed to make ends meet. He sold the '69 Camaro. There's the Nomad with us. That's me in the middle. On the left is my older brother Mark, my younger brother Matt, and then my sister Stephanie.
No. You
And
know,
that's probably about 1995, 1994, somewhere in there.
the thing that I appreciated of reading about Steve is, he fell in love with having his '55 Chevy, which he ended up getting, and he got that, and then he transitioned and fell in love with the Camaros and wanted something a bit more faster. In a way, like you, Drew, you weren't always into rat rods, but then now you've
No,
transitioned to liking it. So
yeah,
it's what happens. You change about what you like, and when it comes to these cars, especially classics.
yeah. I mean, in high school, we still cruised. In '98, my senior year, you cruised. You cruised downtown Waverly. That's what you did. You didn't have cell phones, so you went to town. Everybody cruised. We caught just the end of that. My generation, because nowadays they don't do it. Kids don't do it. But I wasn't really a car guy until, I would say, 8 to 10 years ago. I kind of started to catch the fire. It was something me and Dad could do together, and um, it's been rewarding.
I bet it has. Now you guys go to a show every month. Tell me about that.
Okay, so well, what we do in Waverly, and Waverly is a town of 10,000 people. Waverly, Iowa, great Main Street community. Um, just a typical small town Iowa. Um, we do a cruise night May, June, July, August, September. The fourth Thursday of those months, we do a cruise night in town. It's just come in, cruise, talk, stop, park somewhere, talk, chat, eat at a local restaurant. There's no agenda, but the last 2 cruise nights, August and September of 22, I mean, I'm going to say conservatively, we had 200 to 250 cars cruising
Wow.
Waverly. So it's been awesome. Um, it's been a fun night. There's a lot of great car guys in Waverly. Again, it's that generation that went through it. They're
Yeah.
in their 60s, 70s, 80s. There are some young guys. I'm in my 40s, but there are some young guys that are starting to get it, because I mean, at some point, most of these car guys, who's going to take it? Who's going to move on to the next generation, and who's going to take over this thing?
100%.
I mean, that's a real dilemma, because you go to most car shows, and a lot of them, the guys driving it are older than the cars they're in.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing, but hopefully there's a transition period where some of these young guys, fall in love with it, I guess, like I did.
100%. That's why I like to always emphasize that. And if I see somebody who's done a build themselves, and they're a young guy, like I think I was in Columbus. I met a young guy. He started on the car when he was 14, and he was 16 or 17 at the time, and he restored a Mustang. I think it might have been a 69 Mustang. But I mean, I just loved it. And Good Guys also does that part of the show where they do the next generation. So it's encouraging younger people to get involved, and it has to continue. The car culture has to continue, and that's what my channel's about, to keep it going.
Well, I really enjoy your channel. Like I said, it was cool just to get to know you. I saw you at Good Guys, and I saw you had your shirt had your logo on there, and you were carrying around the camera. And I'm like, honestly, I was like, oh, she must be important. Like, hopefully she. No, I want, because I was, we went there. This is our first big show. We were like, well, hopefully someone films us or someone takes a picture, because you build things you want to be seen. You know what 100%. I mean? So we saw you interviewing a guy as we drove through, the strip, and sure enough, like 2 hours later, you showed up at our place, and I'm like, well, we're finally going to get publicity.
Definitely wasn't someone important, especially back then. It was 5 months ago. I was a month or 2 months into the channel, but I mean, I was loving it, and the people were so nice, and everybody's so kind, like yourself, your dad. People tell me about it, and I just want to know. I don't know what's going on, so I just ask.
Yeah.
And
that's good. I mean, the majority of it's cool in life how you go through things. You meet people. There's always, for lack of a better word, there's always people that aren't friendly at car shows. There are some.
There are? Okay.
But, I mean, you do have the guys that, well, you can't park in front of my car. Or I'm here. You get that. But a lot of them are just good people from all different backgrounds.
100%.
Every different one has a different story, and it is a neat thing to do. Like I said, we don't get to too many shows just because we are pretty busy in the summer, but it's fun. It's just a fun hobby.
Well, that's it. That's why I'm out there. So, you miss out a show, you just come back and check out my channel. Hopefully I would be there, but I'm going to be chasing them like crazy. 2023 is just around the corner. So I'm looking forward to doing a lot more shows and going back to the ones that I did go to, because I love it. Absolutely love it. I get to meet people like you and check out cars and learn. The more I can, the better it is for me, So
right.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It's very fun.
No, I appreciate this, Drew. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and best of luck to you and your family. And
thank you. I want to thank Steve as well. Tell him I said hello, and hopefully I'll see him at some other. Hopefully I'll see him at some other show. But it's real fun. Honestly, thank you. I appreciate it. So many months on, I reached out to you, and you come back on, and you told me more about the truck. So I really appreciate that.
You bet. Anytime.
Thanks a lot for that, mate.
You bet.